Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, my name is Dee Ryan, and on behalf of Limerick Chamber, I'd like to warmly welcome you to today's session with Emily Ross from Inkfine Creative. Today, we're looking at virtual and remote communications, making Zoom work better for your business. And I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I really need as many tips as possible to help me up my video conferencing game. It's certain that this medium is with us for the short term. I love to hear your views, but I can imagine that we're going to be working this way more frequently into the future, even after we return to a post-COVID operating environment. So I'm really appreciative of Emily giving of her time today to assist us and to share with us her learnings. Emily is a growth strategist and business advisor, and she specializes in digital communications. She has a lot of experience in the tech industry. She's the founder of the marketing and PR consultancy Inkfine, and is a co-founder of Sports Tech Ireland and an advisory board member of South by Southwest. And any of you who are in the tech or the marketing space would be familiar with South by Southwest as one of the biggest tech events in the world. Her background has been very interesting, and I think you won't mind me saying curvy, Emily. I think that's how you describe it yourself. And I've heard you refer your career journey through fundraising with UNICEF Ireland, managing campaigns for IKEA, Aer Lingus, P&G, and your current position now as inoculating you against redundancy, and you've made yourself as handy as possible. So I certainly found the session that we shared together, the panel we were on together there recently with the Midwest Project Managers Group, really valuable, and I got a lot out of your contribution. So I was keen to get you in front of our chamber, Limerick Chamber business community, because this is part of a series that we're doing to assist and support our business community as much as possible in this difficult period. So without further ado, I will hand over to Emily, and thank you.
Thanks so much, Dee. I appreciate that lovely intro, and I have to commend the Chamber and yourself on everything that you're doing for the business community. It's been very challenging, and it's great to see such proactive supports going on. I'm also conscious that pretty much the last thing that anyone wants to do on their lunch hour is sit through another Zoom call or a webinar. So for those of you that have made time to be here, thank you very much, and I promise to try and make this as useful and as relevant and as interesting as possible. So I guess one of the things I'd really like to do, actually, if you haven't yet popped your name into the chat window to say where you are in the world, just introduce yourself and say hi. Feel free to have chats, because part and parcel of what we need to do better is figure out the whole engagement piece. It's pretty important. So I'm going to toggle back and forth between my slides and myself and a few other bits and pieces. And so we're going to fly through the next 30 minutes. So a little bit about Inkfine while people are continuing to sign in. Yeah, we're a team of 8 people. We have actually been fully remote since day one. So we're in our 4th year, and so we have one person in the UK, Ben's in Cork, we're in Killaloe, Ballina, Ian's in Dublin, Ruth's in Dublin, Eilish is in Berlin. And so, we've had to figure out, we've kind of have a little bit of a head start in terms of like figuring out how to do stuff virtually. And most of our clients are international as well. So how to communicate effectively, how to actually grow a business and manage teams and figure that out remotely is part and parcel of what we do. And so at the same time, my own learning curve has been pretty steep in the last few months, just trying to totally replace, that real world experience. And look, at the end of the day, nothing is really going to beat real life. It's too important. But what we can do is try and look for the silver linings, look for the opportunities. Crisis accelerates change. And we see this in times of war, in times of intense change, that what happens with the early adopters and the middle segment and the laggards, that adoption curve gets squashed up. And you have first wave benefits, but you also have second wave benefits. Like, for example, with the mobile phone, when it came out first, rich people could book a table in a restaurant. But once the mobile phone became ubiquitous, the second wave benefits were incredible. So that means we can now find our kids, we can book a cab, we can use our phones as password reset devices for banking. So the second wave benefits of technology adoption are coming, and there's going to be so much to look forward to. There is a lot to miss, but opportunities abound. And, it doesn't have to be all bad. Virtual experiences open up remote working, they open up flexibility. It's very inclusive, especially for people with mobility issues, or who perhaps are, unable to work or to find a job in a city centre. One of the reasons I moved to Killaloe was because I was sick of wasting my life sitting 2.5 hours a day in a car stuck in traffic. And I'm able to, manage my life, my career, and spend time with my kids because I have a remote business. And so the virtual thing can be so good if you do it right. And so hopefully I'm going to be able to give you some useful bits of tips and tricks and hacks for optimizing this virtual experience. But I think we will all agree, Zoom is exhausting. Zoom is absolutely knackering. But why is this? So there's been a good bit of research done on this, and it's to do with the nonverbals and the cues that we need when we're listening to somebody and when we're trying to interpret what they're saying. We can't see body language. The nonverbal cues are so much harder to read. You kind of have to emote more because you're trying to communicate through without having, smell, touch. It's very, very, very tiring to do so. I mean, my son's music teacher said to me the other day that, after a day of teaching through Zoom, she's so unbelievably exhausted. Like, she can barely lift her head. And actually, when you think about it, she's looking for all those nonverbal cues: posture, body language, where the fingers are on the keys, and she's trying to teach through that medium. So yes, she's focusing so much of her attention. It's absolutely exhausting. It's also really, really hard if you're on a Zoom call with multiple faces. And by the way, everything that we talk about today is just as valid for Teams or Hangouts or, the video channels that you're using. But multiple face overload means that not only do you have multiple faces to try and read, you're so overwhelmed, you can't interpret anything. And that's really, really exhausting. So there was a really good article actually on National Geographic just the other day, which looked at all of the psychology and the behaviors behind why Zoom fatigue is so taxing. And so while I'm a huge fan of the virtual and this ability to be able to communicate remotely, I would say one sensible thing to do is ask yourself, do I really need my video on for this particular meeting? If it's just catching up, sharing information with people that you know already, perhaps you don't necessarily have to have it on all of the time. And I think we'll definitely see that going forward as we begin to, I suppose, become accustomed to this virtual communication experience. So how can we cope with the exhaustion? I think that I do get asked that quite a lot. So the best thing I can say is be self-aware. You need to understand how much of your energy and your time you're putting into these particular communication sets. I also think it's important to manage expectations. So if you really need to turn your camera off, if you don't want to have a video chat, tell people in advance and explain why. Everyone's human, we all understand. One really useful tip that I would have is about the timings and the numbers. So I don't know about you, but I've definitely started making my meetings shorter. I think, 6 months, a year ago, you'd kind of automatically set an hour-long meeting. Now I'm setting 30-minute meetings or maybe 45 minutes. And a really good thing to do is don't set your meeting at on the hour or on the half hour. Set your meeting to start at 2:15 and finish at 1:45, and give yourself a bookend of 15 minutes at either side, which will just give you a chance to, stretch your legs, pee, eat, just a chance to find yourself again. Because if you have back-to-back Zoom meetings and you don't allow that little window, it's like, not that I'm a smoker, but it's like chain smoking your way through the day. And you get to the end of the day and you feel like you haven't been productive. You haven't actually achieved anything. You're just completely exhausted. So yeah, 15 minutes on either side. So yeah, working the numbers is important. So think of your timings. Also, adapt your behavior and adapt your meetings to the number of people in the Zoom or in the room. And so what do I mean by that? Well, having a conversation is one-on-one is fine-ish, 2, 3, 4 people. But once you go beyond 4 people, it is very challenging to manage the rapport and to manage the interactions. So work the numbers, use breakout sessions. And one of my tips is, and I've just broken it, is don't talk for more than 5 minutes without doing something else, without giving something to engage with. So I'm going to ask the lovely Quiva to pop up our first poll, and I'm going to ask all of you to vote. So do you find Zoom more tiring than real life? Is it yes or the same or no? I have no idea what you're talking about. So, and a lot of that will depend as well on whether or not you're an introvert or an extrovert, or whether or not you're self-conscious, and you know, how much time you spent doing this. So yeah, overwhelmingly, yes, we're seeing, some people don't find Zoom more tiring. Interesting. There's a few of you that don't. Fair play. So that is super interesting. But I gave you a poll to do. So interaction and engagement is fundamental to keeping the attention spans of people that you're communicating with. Because at the end of the day, you're competing with Netflix. That's the virtual experience that people are used to when they're looking at a screen. You kind of need to be engaging, or people will just zone out. And that's not necessarily hard to do if you move from being self-conscious to being self-aware. So this is probably the most practical slide of the whole deck. So this is about how you ensure that you give a better virtual experience. And by the way, I will definitely make time for a Q&A at the end, and I'm more than happy to share the stuff that I've bought, what works, what doesn't, and we can have a chat about that later on. So first and foremost, the most important thing about your virtual comms is the speed of your connection. And there's multiple reasons for this. But in terms of the quality of the experience of the people you were talking to, the connection speed is so critical. So my first preference is hardline. And if you have a broadband box in your house, you're probably working off Wi-Fi. But you can actually attach an Ethernet cable to the back of that box to your laptop or your computer. And this means that you've got a hard line into internet, and it's much more reliable. It's much faster. Well, what you're doing is you're getting around the small amount of latency that wireless can sometimes give. And latency is very, very important for certain types of communication. So if you are, for example, trying to play music with your friends, it's not possible to do on Zoom because everyone's internet speeds are slightly different, and that minute difference in latency will mean that you just can't play together. It sounds terrible. And that is also why it's quite hard to have the same rapport when you're communicating with somebody. There's a slight lag, and good conversation is like a game of tennis. It bounces back and forth, and you can almost predict where it's your turn to speak. But when you take away the non-verbal cues, like the inhalation of breath that somebody takes before they're about to have their say, or if you add that little latency jag, it really means that it's so difficult to have what feels like proper connected communication. So check your connection, preference is hardline, and always have a backup. So know how to tether to your mobile if broadband drops, or if your internet goes, so that your communication is solid. This, I think, is probably sound quality, probably the second most important thing, and it's the one thing that everyone can really easily improve. I do weekly sort of little help videos on LinkedIn. Not me crying for help, it's me sharing stuff that I've found useful and helpful over the week. And I did one about microphones, and it's had thousands of views because it really taps into a pain point that everyone has at the moment. But what's really interesting is that YouTubers have this all figured out. They've been doing this for donkey's years. So they've figured out the lighting, the mics, and there's loads of tech out there that's not terribly expensive and super easy to set up. So invest in a decent mic and boom. So I'm going to show you, actually, I'll give you a little peek. This is my one. So you can see it is, yeah, it looks, it's a professional microphone. I'm just going to put it out of the shot. And it's on a stand, so that will minimize vibrations. And I actually have one for a client that I'm about to send out. So this one is, so this is a boom, right? So it's just a desk clamp. I think it was about 20 bucks on Amazon. And the microphone, it holds the microphone there like that. And it basically, like, it hugely improves the quality of your audio, and it makes it so much easier for people to hear you. And I would be tempted to toggle this off and switch between my regular mic and back, but just on the off chance that I mess it up and I ruin the sound for everyone, I won't do that. But trust me on it. And this is the particular mic I'm using. This one is a Marantz. I do not get any credit for this, by the way. This is a Marantz condenser microphone. Again, it's a USB, just plugs straight into your computer, and it's super high quality. That one was about, I think, 70 or 80 euro. The first one I bought was a Yeti Blue, which was 140 euro and is possibly the best microphone on the market for that price point. It is incredibly useful, easy to use, but has lots of different settings. But I found that one to be, it was quite bulky. It took up too much space on my desk. And even when it was on the boom, it was just kind of too big. So I sold it and I got this one instead. And I'm pretty sure the sound is okay. Oh, I'm going to share the results of that last poll. Okay, I didn't know I had to share it. So I think the audio is okay, but I have a video on LinkedIn that I can share later, which has the, before and after the different mics, and you can really hear the difference. So yeah, it makes such a difference. Now, we've talked about connection and we've talked about sound quality. Oh yeah, pop filter. So this is a pop filter. You've seen them, radio people use them all the time. This one was about £9. And so what that does is it stops plosives. Plosives. Plosives are when air hits the very delicate membrane of the microphone. And so a pop filter goes over the mic and softens that. So that is another way to improve the quality of your audio, so people can really concentrate on what you're saying and not the distractions around what you're saying. So the third thing I want to talk about is lighting. So I am sitting here at my desk, and above my computer is a huge ring light. It kind of looks like a stargate, and it's really bright. But what that does is it means that I get a consistent wash of light across the whole frame. Now, actually, I'm going to turn it off for a second, just so you can see the difference. So now, the reason that these are useful is because the camera in my computer auto adjusts to the ambient light of the room. So if it gets darker, if it gets cloudy, or if there's a window nearby, the light will dim and increase, and my camera will try and adjust. And that change is quite distracting, to the point where if you're sitting with a window behind you, you're in darkness. If you're sitting with a window to the side, you're lit from one side, you look like some sort of witness in a protection program. So actually, good lighting can make a difference. I would certainly recommend it if you are teaching, presenting, recording, or selling. I'm going to turn my light back on. This particular ring light was about 80 euro, I think, and it comes with a stand. It's adjustable. It has a little traveling case, and actually the first thing that we did with it was there's a holder for your phone, and you can set your phone on a timer. We took really nice family photographs, like really well lit, gorgeous photographs, using the ring light. So that was quite cool. The other thing I would say is about the background. Have you ever gone on a Zoom call and you're looking at someone's house and you're like, oh, there's underwear on the radiator? Not interesting. And look, I mean, if you're sharing a house with, your partner or kids or, flat shares, it can be very, very difficult to manage your space. But thinking about your background, even just a little bit, is important. And what that does is it sends non-verbal cues, just like you would in the real world. And so I'm saying non-verbally that I like color and I like books and I like music. And this is a way for the people I speak to know something about me and to feel a little bit more connected, to feel like that they know a little bit more. So even yesterday I had a call with someone and he saw the guitars and we ended up having a chat about music, and he played me a song on his ukulele before we finished the meeting. And isn't that what communication is about? It's about making connections. It's about actually remembering about being human. So think about your background, and think about what you can do to make your communication that little bit better from a visual perspective. I would always remind people to mute background pings and notifications. And I've gotten quite good at turning off my notifications, just, I suppose, for my own mental health as well, because, you know, that sense of constantly being available, constantly being pinged at and being reminded of those pings can be quite exhausting. Okay, so hacks for better virtual comms. So first of all, I'm going to talk about eye gaze, and I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to talk about eyes. So when we are, I do have a diva ring. When we're born, from the moment we're born, we seek out eyes and the smile. Okay, it is human nature to look for the eyes, and so it's really important to remember where your camera is on your computer screen. So right now, the camera on my computer is the top in the middle. And so I have dragged my Zoom box, I've made it quite small, and I've dragged it up to the top near that camera point. So it feels like I am talking to you as opposed to, say, my keyboard. Now, if I just happened to have opened that window down here, sort of out of the way, naturally, I tend to look for the faces. And so I would be talking like this. And I guarantee you, you've all had a Zoom call where you're talking to somebody and they're talking like this. And they're looking at their face or your face, but you're seeing their side profile. And it's really disconcerting. So eye gaze makes a huge difference to the quality of your call. Now, some people have the problematic laptops with the camera that's like right down near the keyboard. And so not only do they have an eye gaze challenge, they also have huge hands whenever they type. So I would say the best thing to do is actually just test stuff. And I'm going to talk about how you can do a self-audit to improve all of that. So I'm also going to talk a little bit about framing. So framing basically means being self-aware about what's in the frame. So I'm in the middle, and then all of the things around me is my frame. And so if I am too close, it's not great. And if I'm too far away, it is not great. Or if I have the angle wrong. So if I'm like just showing the top of my head, or if you're not my messy office. So think about the frame and think about, you know, what you're showing. I'm sure you've again had calls where you're seeing something top of somebody's head or under their chin. So yeah, framing is another way to improve your comms. And then the other thing, is interruptions. Interruptions are a fact of life. We have just got to roll with them. And it's actually, you know, if you're prepared, just try not to sweat it when your kids run naked through the living room, or as happened to me one day, we got chickens on lockdown, and they got out and they started pecking on my window incessantly when I was trying to teach an online session. So yeah, interruptions happen. We're all human. Just, you know, turn your camera off, say I'll be back, and sort out what you need to sort out. So I'm going to share one of my favorite clips, I hope, on here. This clip, hopefully you'll be able to hear it. I'm going to hit play now, but this is all about interruptions.
Scandals happen all the time. The question is, how do democracies respond to those scandals? And what will it mean for the wider region? I think one of your children's just walked in. I mean, shifting sands in the region. Do you think relations with the North may change?
I would be surprised if they do. My apologies.
What North is going to mean for the region?
My apologies. South Korea's policy choices on North Korea have been severely limited in the last 6 months.
That is absolutely one of my favorite clips. And no matter how many times I watch it, I just fall apart laughing. It's just so funny. And you can just sense his absolute cringe. Like you can just feel it. It's very, very good. But yeah, stuff happens. You just kind of have to roll with it. What I think is really interesting, that particular clip, if you think about it from that set perspective I was talking about, it's actually in a bedroom, and he's like put some books and some towels on the bed to make it look kind of like a desk. And there's like, there's a poster on the wall, but when the kids come in and they ruin his set, they give away all his kind of little cheats. And it's just so funny because his wife, which it is his wife, doesn't realize that she's in the frame. And so she's on the ground trying to like drag the kids back. I love it. I love everything about the clip. Anyway, okay, back to our deck. And so that's another thing as well. If you're using slides, trying to toggle back between your face and the slides is always a good idea, so that you can just keep it kind of varied. So hacks for better comms: eye gaze, framing, headsets. Like, this is a kind of a bugbear of mine, because a lot of people have these great headsets with a microphone on them and they wear them for video calls. I suspect that they were really designed and sent out for people who are having phone communications and conference calls, and enables them to be hands-free. I think that when you wear those big bulky headsets, it's another barrier between those nonverbal cues, your ability to read someone's face, and they make you look like an air traffic controller. And the other thing I would say about headsets, the iPhone earphones are super good in terms of the microphone, but sometimes the mic can rub against your collar and create background noise. So it can be quite distracting. So let's do a quick poll. Quiva, would you mind launching the poll about PJs? So I want to know, has anyone actually worn pajamas while on a Zoom call? Have they, as in like from the waist down, like have you have you ever? So right now I am wearing slippers, because I have worn slippers for, I don't know, it feels like ever now. I put on shoes for the first time in ages the other day, and my feet felt weird. It was so funny. So let's see. We've got half of the people saying, I don't know what you're talking about. Good few saying, yes, don't judge me. And a couple saying PJs are absolutely workwear. Yeah. I have to admit, I must, my workwear has gotten a lot more comfortable over the last wee while. Okay, I am very good. Okay, so some rules for Zoom, and hopefully you'll find this of benefit. How are we doing for time? Okay, good. So firstly, when you're on a Zoom call or any video meeting, set expectations in advance. So especially if you've got quite a lot of people need guidance about who should talk and when. It's really important as well to know your audience and help them prepare. So if you have people from multiple teams who are perhaps more senior or more junior, people may not feel that they are entitled to interrupt or contribute. So set expectations. If it's a catch up where information is shared, say so in advance. I personally like to make sure that everybody at the start of a meeting gets a chance to contribute, and so everyone should have a voice. It's also a good thing to, test connections, but manage it as well, because some people like me might blabber on for some time. So get everyone to give a 30-second quick, how are they doing, intro for the day, or what they expect to get out of the meeting. Try not to talk for too long without, breaking it up a bit. Being as engaging as possible, polls, questions, chat, and try and keep people on their toes. I had there's the snap filters. You can get a snap filter for Zoom calls, and I did an all hands meeting for our company the other day entirely as a carrot. So you can see my eyes and mouth. I was going to switch it on now, but on the off chance that I can't switch it off and you have a carrot webinar, I didn't. But you can also change your virtual background in Zoom. You can be surprising and keep people engaged. Another key piece of advice that I would suggest is think about each meeting as having 3 phases: before, during, and after. And think about each phase and what you want out of it accordingly. In virtual, we don't get that kind of water cooler, a chance to chat or to network. So think about how you can actually replace that. You can use private social networks. You can use emails, you can use forums to allow people to talk to each other and engage after the fact. There are lots of different technologies that are enabling you to do that. And one handy tip you can do is, the breakout sessions. So rather than keeping everyone in the waiting room, create a breakout session, enable everyone to go into that and treat that as a meeting room. So people, before a meeting, or you can start a bit late, let them all into a meeting room and let them chat to each other. It's a nice way to mimic that kind of hallway experience. For big Zoom conferences, it's really important to think of that session as an event. And you need to have backup. You can't fly solo. So yesterday, Caoimhin and I tested this run through. We tested the tech, and again, 30 minutes before the call. So preparation is key, and it will absolutely make you a better communicator. So communicating with staff and teams. So this is more to do with internal comms than external comms. But yeah, top tip there. Don't be afraid to have no video chats. Virtual work doesn't mean always on. And so this is actually more to do with kind of etiquette around your video chats and about what's expected. But somebody asked me, so I deliberately put it in here, is it okay to send emails to your teams or to your staff in the middle of the night? And I think, given that I like to work flexible hours, I think the answer is yes. I'd be interested to hear what you think. But I think it's really important to manage expectations and clarify that you don't expect a reply until a reasonable hour. I use the abbreviation NNTR, no need to reply. If I just need someone to, be aware of a fact, I'll fire it over, no need to reply, or, don't look at this until the morning. It's fine to work the hours that suit you, but manage expectations about when people are going to be responding. And I think as well, for virtual work, you need to measure the output, not the input. It's not about visibility or presenteeism. It's about how effective the person is in their role. And communication is fundamental to our efficacy, no matter what we're doing. And so thinking about how we communicate and improving that is really important. I would also suggest take the time to check in one-on-one, because some people will find it fine. Some people will have no problem with Zoom. Some people will find it incredibly, incredibly challenging because they might feel uncomfortable or exposed or shy. And so it's important to get a sense of what people need and expect one-on-one. And I would suggest, if you are managing people and you need them to connect and open up, you need to do the same. So you need to be human, you need to be vulnerable, you need to share, and you need to communicate with them in a way that makes them know it's safe for them to say, I'm really struggling with this, or I find this video stuff really, really hard. And you can work around it. You can find lots of different ways and means to adapt. And everyone's talking about Zoom right now, but I promise you, this is just one particular platform on our journey towards virtual work. So these are some practical things that you can try. If you remember back in the good old days, there was Casual Friday. Consider having a no camera Friday. So this, I'm all for video comms, but a day where there's blanket permission to not have your camera on and to go back to old school voice, email, old school, and maybe you might be a bit more productive and take a break from the anxiety and stress that can happen when you're on Zoom all the time. Another tip that I would suggest you try do is standing up. So when we're advising our clients from a PR perspective about for radio interviews, I would always say, have a fixed line phone and take the call standing up, because you have more air in your lungs and you sound more alert and more awake. So, if you're teaching a class in the real world, or if you're speaking, you don't necessarily come on stage and sit down. It's a lower energy. So if you want to have more energy in your comms, consider standing up. And now I'm going to talk about audits. So this is the most practical way that you can help improve your virtual communications. So the first one is a self-audit. So I would, with permission, your next Zoom call, ask your fellow attendee, perhaps look at a one-to-one, ask them for permission to record it. It's a simple click button. Record the call and then watch it back. And try and watch it back objectively. Try not to be self-conscious, but check things like your eye gaze, the audio quality. If there's latency, look for that rapport I talked about, that kind of tennis experience. Is there flow between the two speakers, or is there a slight lag? So this might be a problem with your connection speeds. Be critical of your connection, of your quality of your call, of your background, of your lighting, of your frame. And so make some notes and improve them. And I think the best thing that most people can do is invest in a decent microphone. I would also consider asking somebody else for feedback, because, sometimes we can have our own blind spots. So someone who has no problem being very honest, ask them to go on a Zoom call with you and critique what it is that, the frame, the audio, and even things like, do you mumble? Are you able to, are you more likely to talk too much or talk too little? Ask for feedback and be self-aware. So I think one of the best tips I could actually give anyone, whether they're communicating in the real world or online, move from self-consciousness to self-awareness. Being self-conscious is just going to hold you back, because this is a reality now. We all have to adapt to it. Being self-aware will make you a better communicator, because you will be more considerate, more empathetic, and you will be able to self-improve. So just to summarize the things to try and the things that matter: latency, audio quality, lighting and set, and eye gaze. And I'm conscious that my eye gaze is now going to the corner. And eye gaze. Okay, time for our last poll, I think. I would love to know, and so answer this maybe in the chat window. What do you hate most? Oh no, actually I've got answers in here. So what do you hate most about Zoom? Is it just exhausting? There's no social interaction. I feel self-conscious. I find it hard to interrupt. Or tell me in the chat what you hate most. And I will open up, stop share, and I'll open up my chat. I've got a great question here from Edwina Gore, and I'll tackle that in just a minute. What do we hate about Zoom? Fantastic. Actually, as you write some answers, I'm actually going to tackle this question from Edwina. Any advice on how to keep interactivity going during a brainstorming session? I find with Zoom, the same people contribute and others don't get a chance to speak like they would in a room. Such a good question. And this is one of the reasons why I am a huge fan of Zoom compared to some other tools. For example, Crowdcast does everything that Zoom does, including the chat window and the polls. But if somebody asks a question, they can come on and I can welcome you into the chat. Like I can turn on your video camera and welcome you to, it's like a chat show. And so it's brilliant. And this is a great way, to keep the audience on their toes if there's a chance that they could be pulled into the chat in any second. So yeah, I would definitely think beyond Zoom for brainstorming sessions. There's also this, huge explosion in new technology that's being developed. LinkedIn has launched LinkedIn Virtual, which is very strong engagement additionals. And I would also consider looking at Slack or other particular private social networks. There's a really good one called Run the World, which is mobile first, and it has a cocktail hour function, which it's like a roulette where individuals who have been in the session can meet and chat on audio for like 3 to 5 minutes after the session. So there's loads of different tools that solve that problem, and I hope that has been helpful. Thank you for asking, Edwina. Okay, so we're sharing the poll results now. So they're exhausting. There's kind of a good even spread, and a few answers in the chat window. So yeah, hard for people to contribute and have discussions, and interruptions can stifle conversations. Yeah, for sure. Lisa says being static, training, and always on the move and in person. Yeah, and you know what, the body language of teaching is really interesting. So maybe consider trying to stand if you're teaching. That gives you a little bit more freedom. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my deck. We're on the home stretch now. I think I've got like 2 more slides. So I would say think beyond Zoom. So the future of remote work is virtual, and communications are going to morph across video and Slack and social and email. Some of the other tools that you might want to consider testing if you have a video comms need is Crowdcast, which I mentioned. StreamYard is really interesting. StreamYard it feels like you're on Sky News. You have a ticker tape, you've got your logo, and you can invite people into your green room, and then you can live stream your chat with your interviewee or your guest straight into LinkedIn or Instagram or YouTube, and it's super easy to use. So StreamYard is fab. Emma Langford, the incredible Limerick musician, has been doing live music broadcasts on StreamYard, and it's been really, really fun. LinkedIn has launched virtual, Run the World is mobile, Slack has video chat within its function. And like, it's just so interesting. Technology is really morphing forward fast. Like the guy who made Inception launched his newest movie, his trailer, Tenet. He didn't put it on in TVs and cinemas. He put it on in Fortnite. Somebody ran a virtual conference in Animal Crossing, which is a multiplayer platform game. And so all of these layers are starting to collide, and the real world and the virtual world are I think, coming closer together rather than further apart. Huge amounts of innovation. We're all talking about Zoom now, but I remember a time where we thought that Nokias were the only phone in the world, and look where we are now. Everything changes. Zoom is today, but start to look for the second wave benefits of remote working, and don't be afraid to adapt to those tools. I'm going to leave you with 3 key takeaways, and then we'll have time for maybe 1 or 2 quick questions. So everything changes. So I would suggest we try and embrace it. There's a lot of people thinking, oh, you know, when we get back to normal, or when things are the way they used to be. I don't think they'll ever be quite the way they used to be. And I think if we embrace things and run forwards towards them, that the world will be a better place, and we'll find the silver linings. The second tip, give people permission to tell their stories. Share your stories so that you will encourage them to connect, because we all just want to be human, and whether we're communicating in the real world or online, it's all about actually making those connections and doing it as humanly as possible. And the last tip is to be a better communicator no matter where you are. Move from self-consciousness to self-awareness, so that you can improve all of the layers of your comms. And so I am going to stop sharing my screen now and go back to the eyes. Hello. And I'm going to grab some questions maybe. So let's see. We have, what tech would you recommend for recording webinars? Oh, I have a brilliant hack for this. So there is a particular tool called Descript. That's Descript. And Descript, you can, when you record your Zoom, you can drag the Zoom file into the Descript window. And firstly, it transcribes everything. So everything that was said is now written out in a Word document or in a document. But here's the magic, awesome bit. You can delete all the ums and the ahs, and they get deleted from the video file. You can take an entire paragraph, copy and paste it, and it copies and pastes that segment of the video. So it's video editing for dummies. So you can record your webinar, and you can tidy it up, and you can turn it into a blog post, all with one tool. So Descript is amazing. What else? What are our other questions? Let's see. Is it advisable when hosting a meeting to put all the attendees on silent, or let attendees do it themselves? So that is all to do with how many people are in the call. So if you have 4 people and you want to, so it's not manageable to have, you know, lots and lots of people with their cameras and their voices on. It's just cacophony. I know my 10-year-old has a Zoom training session with his football club, and there's dozens of kids and they're all just shouting. So that doesn't work. So if it's broadcast, ideally a limited number of people talking at any one time. But I would try and enable that little meeting room space so people can chat to each other before and after. I hope that answers your question. Okay, so we have reached our end time on time. I'm happy about that. I just want to make sure, is there any more questions before I hand back to, I don't know if I'm handing back to Caoimhe or to Dee, but let's just have a look. Reith, you're more than welcome. Thank you so much. And Roseanne, your views on posting and recording Zoom webinars to YouTube. Well, obviously you need permissions. As long as you edit them and make them searchable. I actually have a blog post on how you make YouTube posts really searchable. So I would mail that to you, Roseanne, if you want to DM me afterwards. And listen, if you want to ask me anything, or if you would like me to audit, if you want me to give you your critical feedback on your camera, I will absolutely make 5 minutes for a video chat and give you some really blunt feedback on your audio and lighting, if that helps. I will make a list of all the links and the resources I used for this particular talk. I will put them on Twitter and on LinkedIn if you want to find me. I think my contact details were on the slides. And yeah, I think that's it. Thanks so much, everyone.
Emily, it's Dee here. Hi, everybody. Just coming back in again to say thank you so much. That was so useful. I got so much out of that. Caoimhe and I have been just messaging away, and we will be, of course, doing a record. We've done a recording today. We'll be circulating this first of all to everyone who attended, and anyone who registered and wasn't able to attend, I'll be circulating also through the wider chamber community. And yeah, that'd be great to get your tips and to share in an email with everybody afterwards. And I'd just like to say, on behalf of all the attendees and us, the organisers, thank you so much for your generosity and your time today. Really appreciate it.
A pleasure. Thanks so much. See you, everyone. Have a great
Bye,
day.
everyone. Thanks for joining.
Bye.